Hello everybody, welcome back to another video on the Square More channel. Today, people, we are going to be taking a look back at the Australian Grand Prix that happened on Sunday. I'm recording this on the Monday after because I was busy during the day on Sunday, could not have a chance to record. And yes, what a very interesting race, the first race of these regulations. And whether or not we have found out more is is a topic for discussion because Australia is a very weird track. But we are going to cast our minds back to Saturday morning, very early morning in the UK, in FP3, because that's when I think the weekend really started to tell its story for everyone. And starting with the clear, we'll start from the very top, and that, of course, being that Mercedes finally decided to stop sandbagging. They got the sand, they threw it out, and Russell setting the clear pace in that session. Antonelli we'll get onto in just a second, but it was at this point when we realised, like, okay, they really are the favourites for this season. And, you know, I don't see for a few races anyone catching up to them, which was my initial thought. After kind of finding out this session, I kind of missed practice three because I woke up at 10 minutes before qualifying, so I had to really catch myself up and everything quickly. Obviously, the big tail from practice three being the Antonelli incident. People thought he was going to miss qualifying. He didn't for a reason we know about, and I'll get on to later. It would look like a very heavy shunt. I've honestly completely forgotten what corner he crashed on, but it was a great job by the Mercedes mechanics to even have a chance of him getting back into qualifying and him eventually qualifying on the front row. Great achievement, and obviously that's why Mercedes did get a 1-2 finish. Other stories come out from that practice session. Sainz did break down in front of the pit lane. Seems to be quite a few teams are having software issues just with the ECUs. And yeah, he just stopped just before the pit lane, and because of that, he had to start 21st on the grid, which, for me was a great thing, not finding out why he wasn't leaving the garage until after Q1, and I was very upset as a Science fan. But also Stroll as well. I think he had a few issues practice three, didn't take part in qualifying either, probably because he's worried his nerves were going to fall off. But then talking of qualifying, this is when everything went absolutely crazy. We'll start off in Q1 first of all. Obviously, we weren't sure about Antonelli starting, weren't sure whether the Astons were going to be able to set proper laps. Um, Science obviously was out, Stroll was out, Alonso did go out, did do pretty well, all things considered, but we'll get into it in a second because the main story, especially in Q1, was Max Verstappen's crash about 7 minutes into the session. I now my very tired self, who was just like, "Ugh," was like, oh my god, because it was just you don't see Max Verstappen crash on his own anymore. He only crashes with other people when he gets a bit angry in Spain. But this was definitely an early contender for shocking moment of the season so far. And everyone was like, "Oh my god, driver ever, he must have touched the grass, or whatever." But no, and it's become quite a big discussion point amongst the F1 community. Is, well, his rear axle was just locked due to a software issue, and it's just forced him to go into barrier. Luckily, he wasn't a massively damaging crash, so he didn't have to start from the pit lane due to repairs. Um, it's an interesting thing because obviously these drivers are doing the super clipping thing, which is where they shift down a gear to help with energy recovery to use throughout the rest of the lap, which in qualifying is very useful. So obviously he was just doing that as the rest of the grid would have been doing, and yeah, his car was just like nana, and yeeted him into the barriers pretty much. Obviously, he was very Max Verstappen kind of reply, fantastic, and yes, but because of that, it guaranteed Antonelli to get out, and oh boy, he did. Immediately going, I think it was second or third quickest after the first qualifying. Making us sure it's like, okay, yeah, this Mercedes, Mercedes where his body work is casually flying off all the time. I think he caused a pit lane infringement as well. just standard Antonelli stuff. He was probably there until 5 in the morning my time, 1 hour into the race. I've just realised what I said. Other topics to talk about with that session. Alonso, you know, obviously going into the session, everyone was like, okay, Aston Martin 21st, 22nd. Obviously wasn't because of some people not participating or Verstappen crashing out. Alonso with the vibrating Aston Martin, which we didn't realise it was going to be that bad. Obviously, all this stuff said about how many laps they were going to do was said after I did the championship predictions video, and everyone was like, okay, I'll just do 20 laps. They'll be at the back of the grid, you know, just rolling chicanes, moving chicanes, I should say. And then Alonso, and you know, apparently to help with the lesser vibrations, they sent him out on a quite high fuel load, so they wouldn't feel it as much. And Alonso, honestly, for being on a higher fuel load, because everyone else is going to be running on relatively low or very low, to only be, I think it was 2.6 seconds of the pace, I think Aston Martin will look back on the week and be like, okay, yeah, there's clear progress made. He almost got into Q2, albeit with three cars not competing. But yeah, I think it's something they can take away. And we saw in the race they kept going in, out, doing the hokey cokey, all about, you know. So hopefully, you know, Aston Martin make quicker progress than we expect, they expect maybe, and we'll see next week what happens with them. Obviously, now going into Q2, nothing really crazy happened in Q2. Obviously, having seven of the big eight meant an extra midfield car could get through. Bortoletto and the Racing Bulls took advantage of that. And yeah, just at the end of the session, Bortoletto's car decided to stop functioning. So Lindblad almost like beyond rear-ended him into the pit lane. That was a bit of a scary moment, but yeah, overall a good weekend. Obviously, Q2 you lost Colapinto, Gasly, Ocon, Behrman, Albon, Hulkenberg. Hulkenberg was very close. Bortolet, I believe he started P11. That sounds about right. Um, and then obviously going into Q3 now, obviously at this point everyone was like, okay, yeah, Mercedes pole, but then we weren't sure by either how much or what the starting grid would be behind, because obviously you still had Hajar, the Ferraris, and the McLarens, and it could have been in any order. Obviously, but then what would a qualifying session be without a quick red flag? Because some stupid idiot who's probably not got a job anymore, I hope you find a job soon, at Mercedes left the cooling thingy off, which costs God knows how much, probably more than I earn in like 20 billion years. And yeah, it just yeeted off. And obviously, we're like, okay, there wasn't anything said at first, and then all of a sudden there was a red flag, and that's because Lando Norris ran it over. Now, whether because of that, it didn't look like it destroyed his front wing, but if they did replace it, whether there would have been any small like differences which they wouldn't have had time to change, because I think front wing angle is one of the few things you can change after parc ferme. Um, you know, I think was the reason why Norris was a tiny bit off Piastri in the qualifying session, but then obviously when it came to the final round, Russell and Antonelli miles ahead of anyone, with third place being Isaac Hadjar, and you know. We don't know what Max could have done in that session. I believe Max would have been ahead, maybe a chance, you know, definite third, maybe a chance of splitting the two Mercs, but Hadjar, I don't think anyone expected him to just get P3 straight away, especially to be ahead of both the Ferraris, which I'd say people expect him to be the second quickest team. I think it would be quite close between Ferrari and Red Bull throughout the season, especially at the start. I believe McLaren, after watching this race, is a clear fourth best team on the grid currently. They just don't have everything together currently. And then after that, we have Charles Leclerc in P4. You know, Hamilton with a P7 start. I'm forgetting numbers apparently, with the McLaren sandwiched in between them. You know, it was very close. I think it was only like a tenth and a half separated that group. And then you had Liam Lawson, Arvid Lindblad, and then Bortoleto, who didn't take part in Q3 because of the issues he suffered in Q2. Which, that qualifying session was pretty decent. I think it was the expected outcome in terms of the front row, especially. But obviously, Verstappen being out, we had questions about how well he'd be able to come back through. Albert Park's never been infamously known for its overtakes, and we didn't know how it was going to work with the new car regulations. So then we now fast forward to Saturday at about, let me think, we'll say 3:15 in the morning. I forget how long it is before the grid opens, and a lot of people waking up not long before the race, and they woke up to some very shocking news. At turn 5, Oscar Piastri shifted up a gear on the curb, and the car just went, no, 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 not today, brother, and absolutely threw him into the barrier. Now, whether that was due to the new engines needing like more, I don't know, control over the shift. I'm not a driver myself, but it was a very uncharacteristic mistake from Piastri, and yeah, it took him out. He didn't even get it to his corner. He crashed at turn 5. They were all waiting for him to turn and going, yeah, Piastri, yeah, and then they just went, oh my god. Much like that time when Verstappen crashed at Eau Rouge at the start of the 2019 Belgian Grand Prix, and you had all the fans of the Verstappen bit down like Camel Straight. Yeah, I think it's the Camel Straight of Belgium. Um, Yeah, it was a very shocking moment. I mean, Hamilton had a free grid slot in front of him at the start. Obviously, you know, if Lawson had an incredible start, Norris could already just cut to the left. It could have made a big difference in people's strategies for the start, as well as not making it to the start. Nico Hulkenberg having an engine issue of some sort, which I still have never come over what the actual issue was. But I think it's a shame, considering how well Bortoleto did on race pace throughout. I think Hulkenberg being there as well could have added a bit more strategy together as the team. Maybe Hulkenberg could have held Lindblad or Behrman up, who finished ahead of Bortoleto, but we'll never know. Then we get to the actual start. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. Everyone's just barely is expecting to get the cocktail sticks out so they can have their eyes open like that. But then no, at the start, 1, 2, 3, 5, go, because it was the quickest lights out I've seen in bloody human history. And the Ferraris, we all saw this in preseason testing, but we saw it to its full effect. The Ferraris just absolutely shot off. Hamilton went up from seventh to like third, or I think it was fifth before he overtook Lindblad and Hadjar. Lindblad was another person who had a great start as well. And Leclerc just shot past the front three. Even Russell was shocked. He said in the cool down run he was expecting to see Hadjar alongside him. But yeah, it was just we all saw this. We all saw the clips in like the practice starts and test about Ferrari things, and people thought, oh, other teams might be sandbagging. No, it was very clearly that Ferrari have clearly been the one team to find a way with these regulations, how to do well at the start, and fair play to them. So, couple laps go. Oh no, I forgot one more thing at the start. Liam Lawson had a terrible start, and Colapinto. I can't believe it didn't show this until just in the cool down run. That was the first time everyone saw it. I think unless you were like watching certain drivers on like their onboard views. Colapinto doing an amazing swerve, cost him quite a few positions at the start as well, which was a shame for him. But yeah, scary stuff. That could have gone very downhill because it's not the widest track in the world, Australia, especially before you go into like the proper run into turn 1, because once you've got the pit lane alongside you, it could have been a very scary crash. But luckily, nothing happened. Then we carry on, a lot of racing going on. Russell and Leclerc switching about, getting points for people's fantasies. I rate it, I rate it. And then you've got a whole squabble behind you. Norris was just kind of there. Max got up through the grid relatively quickly on the hard tyres, which I think was good to see. And the overall the racing was brilliant for the first 10 laps. I generally think you had overtakes going everywhere, like drivers swapping back and forth. I think it's quite interesting how the energy recovery has come into as a strategy for actual battles themselves. So yeah, fair play. In that respect, I think the regulations work. And then we had our first engine retirement of the race. Isaac Hadjar on about, it was around like lap 10. Car just, gave up because if it's not one Red Bull, it's the other. And I felt quite sorry for him because I think he could have really got in there for maybe got in there for the podium places. He was running up, he might have been running P3 at the time. But yeah, it's a very interesting race up until that point. And then the first VSC came out, and then everyone pitted except one team. And I think we all know who that team is, mainly because the race has happened. Ferrari. Ferrari just. I don't know. As Hamilton said on the radio, at least one of them should have pitted. It could have created a lot of diversion in the Mercedes garage. Maybe could have forced. Yeah, it might not have guaranteed them the win, but it could have gotten them a double podium and put them close in the constructors, taking points from Mercedes. Like maybe it would have been like Russell, Leclerc, Hamilton, or Russell, Hamilton, Leclerc, depending on which one they pitted. So yeah, I think there was a massive missed opportunity there. And then obviously not long after that, on about lap 18, I think it was, Bottas had a similar issue to Sainz from practice free and literally just stopped right outside the pit entry. Few cars took advantage of this when a VSC was happening. I think it was like Verstappen, Gasly, and Bortoletto maybe. They got their free pit stop, and people were thinking, oh yeah, maybe Ferrari could do now, and then pit lane entry closed. So they got a bit lucky with all that because I think Verstappen would have been. I don't remember how far ahead he was of Behrman and Lindblad, but he could have been fighting with them rather than fighting for Norris at the end. After that, I think let's go on to the overall thing about Cadillac as well, because Perez was miles off it from everyone qualifying. They were the slowest by a long shot, but you could hear on their team radios after qualifying they're expecting this. I think they're going to improve a lot. I did say in my championship predictions, which are already a mess because of a bloody 18-year-old, that they might scrape like a few 10th place finishes, which would be huge for them because we don't know what's going to happen with Aston Martin. We think they're going to improve. I think there's no doubt about it. But how long it takes for them to improve, and I think whilst reliability is a bit of a concern, all these clipping issues, these software issues, people not able to start a race, it's going to be interesting. Then going back into the race, obviously at that point after the safety car, Mercedes just dealt with the situation perfectly. Russell never really needed to push himself. Once he said he was going to be okay on those hard tyres, everyone was like, okay, yeah, this is going to be the top two. It's going to be a 1-2 finish. Obviously, then you had Leclerc and Hamilton. They weren't really near anyone. Leclerc pitted again, I think, because obviously everyone's pit stops were out of sync. Leclerc had like 10 lap fresher tires, but never really looked like he made a dent into Antonelli. Antonelli was catching up to Russell to the end, towards the end. To be fair, not a rate where it's like, oh, we might challenge for the win. It was just I think Russell was coasting at the end, making sure he didn't use too much fuel, making sure his tires just don't go. He did the job he needed to do, and I think that's perfectly fair. As for the rest of the grid, to be fair, outside the points, there wasn't really much to talk about. Lawson never really showed the same pace as Lindblad did. I think he just didn't recover from that start very well and was just never in a good track position to show the actual pace of the racing bulls, which was much better than everyone thought it would, including myself. You know, I put them in my fantasy team because I was like, okay, I'll take a risk rather because everyone's put Haas. I put them in instead, and they did much better than I thought, and I was very happy with that. And now everyone's putting Racing Bulls in the team and Lindblad, so it's very interesting that the pecking order. I guess in regards to pecking order compared to what we thought, I think Alpine were a bit off. I know Colapinto had to slow down quite a bit. Um, Obviously at the start losing quite a few positions because of Lawson being extremely slow. But yeah, they just didn't. I mean, Gasly got a point. That's a helpful point. We don't know how much that's going to play into their hands by the end of the season. So any points on the board early on is good before all the upgrades come in and people messing up on them. Because especially with new regulations, we don't know how successful upgrades are going to be. Um, As for Williams, Williams just there. They were probably the most their team. It was just Science and Albon just vibing for a whole race. No one expected them to do well. Um, I didn't expect them to do well. I don't think they will for a few races. It's just one of them. Maybe that will change. China's a completely different track to Australia and the rest of Canada, so maybe we'll see some different teams be towards the top. So it'd be interesting to see what everyone's situation is with that, especially considering it's a sprint weekend. There's only one practice session. They've got that long ass straight, and so it's going to be interesting to see which teams suffer the most from having a lack of battery at the end, or people who struggle with recharging their battery. We saw that Verstappen had a few issues, so maybe Red Bull won't be as on top or like as far up there because Australia you kind of got the main straight and then you got the long left hander, which used to be that chicane before. Thank God they got rid of that. But yeah, Haas did well. Ocon was having a good ding dong battle with Bortoleto and Gasly. Behrman did very well, overtaking Limbad to be best of the rest. Further back in my reason to put him 10th in the Drivers' Championship and had a very, very good weekend overall. I'm trying to think, is there anything else to talk about, do you guys? No, which means we now move on to us rating the drivers. How did I do that? I'm such a magician. So obviously it's the normal 10 to 1 system thing. 10 is your weekend was blimming effing brilliant. I don't know why the driver orders is like this. I did not make this. Um, so I guess we start with Williams then because best driver. So Alex Albon, I think it's fair to just give both Williams drive. I'll give Albon a 6 because he finished ahead. Sainz a 5. They were both nowhere. The car's clearly not got the pace yet. Sainz obviously you can't be like, oh, he did terrible in qualifying, couldn't take part because of something out of his control. Went from 21st to what 13th. It's just a whatever kind of thing. Honestly, similar to Stroll, I forgot to talk about the Aston Martins going in, out, in, out. I know I kind of mentioned it when I was talking about qualifying, but yeah, it's a very interesting situations. You just see them. They both started, and then they were like to Alonso, "Okay, retire. We've got an issue." And it was like, "Ha!" And then Alonso came back out. And we were like, "Oh my god, he's killing himself, the poor guy." And then hold on, phone, shut up. My phone won't shut up. Let me just move it over here. I just had it to remind myself what to talk about to you guys. Yes, and then all of a sudden Stroll went in with an issue, and then Alonso came back out after Bottas retired. He was then 15 minutes behind a non-existent Bottas car, which was quite funny to me. Stroll, honestly, I think it's just I'm going to give Alonso a 7 because it was qualifying performance. Stroll, in a similar situation, obviously we can't judge him in qualifying because he didn't take part. And the race, you don't expect anything. So I think a 5 is just fair. I'm giving that as the bog standard. Got nothing better to do kind of thing. Antonelli is just going to get a 9. Oh my god, my thing won't screw up. He's definitely not getting a 6. Antonelli's getting a 9 because, I mean, great weekend. Obviously, just a bit behind his teammate, who we will undoubtedly be giving a 10 out of 10. Flawless, pretty much. Once practice free happened, and everyone's like, "Oh right, did whatever he needs to do." You know, clear that Ferraris are the best starts. So who knows? Who knows what how teams are going to counteract that in the future? Who know, and obviously got the whole compression ratio thing still. So whether Mercedes will fall off a bit if they have to change stuff to do with that, that will also affect the other Mercedes teams. I really hope not. Nico Hülkenberg, Hulkenberg can get 6. Maybe, yeah, I mean, good qualifying session, wasn't far off his teammate at all. Just unlucky to not start the race where I think, he could have made difference. It could have been him in that 10th place instead of Gasly. We don't know if that's going to make a difference in constructors towards the end of the season. So yeah, Bortoletto for me. Bortoletto is going to get an 8. I think it's clear the Audi could be the seventh, no, the sixth quickest team, but yeah, Borsetto, great drive, very good racing with everyone he was involved with, and yeah, he can be proud of himself this weekend. Colapinto, bit of a nothing weekend. Gasly outperformed him a lot. I'd say 5 for Colapinto. He, you know, just about got through into Q2, qualified P16th, finished P15th, 14th, one of the two. Got a bit did he get unlucky? He got unlucky at the start, losing all his positions, so he had to kind of work back through that. And I guess he gained some of those positions that he lost back through the retirements ahead. And yeah, he was just kind of there. I think he's going to do better as the season goes on. Whether the Alpine will also do better, and then it might counteract that. So it's hard to judge. Who knows? Speaking of Gasly, Gasly can get a 7. Or does he deserve an 8 as well? I don't remember where he qualified. He did get a point though, and Ocon was in a quicker car. I'll give Gasly an 8 as well. I don't know how Alpine's weak, and Alpine were expected to be really good, but I think quite a few midfield teams are just. It's either the type of track we're at, or just other midfield teams with sandbagging. I think they're just here to they're just definitely there in like the Formula 1.5 category. I think they'll either be really good at some tracks and is really bad at others. I know all teams are probably going to be like that, but I think Alpine will be the biggest showcase of it on the grid, if you get my drift. Um, Lewis Hamilton can get a 7. Didn't have the best qualifying, just like himself last year. He's probably quite annoyed with that, but I think to get fourth, not be too far off his teammate, had an amazing start. Probably benefited from Piastri not being directly in front of him. Almost got involved in the fight for the lead before the first VSC, and that would have been quite entertaining. But then obviously the Hadjar time, it didn't happen long after that, so we can get to see that. Did mention the strategy blunder, so that gives him a few more brownie points. But I think he can be happy with the weekend. I think Ferrari going in a good direction. Charles the Blimming Chair is going to get. I think Charlotte Leclerc deserves a 9. Absolutely, as I've talked about 10 times already on this video in regards to his rocket start. Unbelievable. Had some great battles. Tried to get involved as much as he could. I just don't think the Ferrari had the general pace, but to stay with the Mercedes. So I think he couldn't have done any better this weekend. Qualified quite well. Had two McLarens in front of him before. I can't speak English before at the start, obviously. And yeah, great weekend. I think all three podium sitters, correct order they deserve to be in. Liam Lawson, now this is a tough one. Obviously, out qualified Lindblad, but that terrible start. I think I'm going to give him a 5, which makes me think I'm going to move. I'm going to do a bit of a shimmy about quickly, just because I think I know to put in 6. I'm going to move them to a 4. I'm going to give the 4 here is going to just be like the didn't take part in a session, kind of screwed them over, no man's land. This can be just full on no man's land or very contrasting things. Lawson, I don't know whether he just struggled being in traffic the whole time, struggling with overtaking. Being like we saw how competitive Lindblad was with defending and switchbacks. I guess there's not many hairpins on this track for that to be a thing. Actually, what am I saying? I need to shut up. But yeah, overall in the race, Lindblad absolutely outperformed him and single-handedly destroyed my championship predictions. But it's okay. I think he'll do better off in China and everything. Speaking of which, I don't know why that leads to Lindblad. Lindblad can definitely get a lovely 9 out of 10. Oh, No, height 8. He can go. You can go above Bortoletto if you let me. Let me put him above Bortoletto for God's sake. It might be easier if I do that. There we go. Um, yeah, him and Behrman were just, I think, leagues above anyone else in the race. Who were in the Formula 1.5 bit. They showed great. Bortoletto probably being. I'm going to move Gasly down to 7. Oh my god, it really does not like me putting drivers in the very top. And saying that Behrman's not next. Never mind. Yeah, Lindblad, very good, unbelievable debut. Verstappen's probably like, yeah, yeah, no, I would have done better. They probably said, good showing, young man. Um, yeah, was just very, very competitive at the high end of the midfield. Obviously, lost out in the battle to Behrman. Hard to say whether Haas was quicker. I'd probably say Racing Bulls were a bit quicker based on the fact. Oh no, they're probably quite equal. I'm gonna just not decide because I think either way it kind of doesn't back up my point with things. Ocon can just get a 6 really. I think Behrman just outperformed him. He had a good fight with Gasly, but I think Gasly is in a slower car than the Haas. Um, 11th place. Hopefully, he doesn't follow his teammates' trend of last season, just getting a billion 11th places. But yeah, decent weekend, great weekend for Haas in general, and yeah, no, honestly, not much more to say on Ocon, despite being involved in a massive fight. Behrman is going to join the 8 gang. This is the trio. I'll put him in the second one because I think Lindblad, it being his debut and the better qualifying performance, he deserves to be ahead. But Behrman, great overtakes on people, just got through the field to the point, obviously, where he couldn't progress anymore for obvious reasons. He's going to have a very good year. Everyone said it. There's a reason why he's the most picked driver on F1 Fantasy, and there's honestly not much more to say beyond that. Just he's very good performance wise. Both Cadillac drivers can just get 5. What else do you expect them to do? Literally no man's land. Bottas retirement, yeah, I suppose. Um, See, now I feel like we're getting to the 4 most interesting rankings of them all. I'm going to just give Norris a 6. I don't know if it's because of McLaren pace. Um, it is such an odd one to do, like just rank. Um, I guess he stayed ahead of Verstappen. I could give him a 7 for that. He didn't crash out on the installation lap. I guess let me just think. He had a better weekend than Ocon, but did he have a better weekend than Hamilton? He out qualified him. Ferrari drugstore. Mm, we're gonna. No, I'm not gonna say that because it will say the funny numbers together. Does he deserve a 7? Better than Gasly, better than Alonso, better. He gets a 6.5. There you go. I think he's on the cusp of that. Piastri, 4. I mean, if I have to lower these two because they didn't take part in qualifying, he arguably deserves a 3. But he can be at the very bottom of 4. He's going to be the lowest ranked driver in this whole flipping list. It's hard to tell. I mean, the only question I have is, yeah, it could have been a software issue, but why is he going that wide on that curb on the installation lap? Yeah, formation lap maybe, but it just doesn't make any sense. Or maybe, on the second one doing, I don't know whether he did 2 or whether it was I wasn't awake and I couldn't find anything on it. It just doesn't make much sense. I mean, I know he's an Australian driver in Australia, so yeah, he's got, he's going to need to bounce back very quickly in China. Obviously, did he win in China last year? Yes, he did win in China last year in the main race. Um, so yeah, he's got a lot of work to do. Verstappen can get. I think he can join the 8 gang. I would have given him a 9 if he overtook Norris, but I think it's very clear that he would have definitely been 5th. Maybe could have been somewhere perhaps in that fight for the top four if he didn't crash out. Obviously, that wasn't his fault. That's why he's not getting lowered down in any way. Um, I think it's a very good weekend for him. 8 points though, he definitely would have wanted to leave with more, and he's going to probably attack a mechanic for making him um, for the software issue, even though it's probably not anyone's fault. It's just how these regulations are. Isaac Hadjar probably also. I'm going for Isaac Hadjar 7. I had a very good qualifying performance, obviously, but then the whole race thing happened, and I think it's fair if I put Alonso in 7. I think Hadjar deserves to be there as well. So yeah, or Hadjar maybe could have been in the fight for the podium. I'm trying to think. I think Hamilton just overtook him before his engine issue happened. Whether that's why Hamilton overtook him because he's losing power, I don't know. But yeah, that is literally the rankings. I don't even have to show the lower numbers. You get to see everyone there. So, thank you everyone if you watched the whole way through. If you are excited for the Chinese Grand Prix, make sure to like and subscribe so that I can have a lot of people waiting for me when I upload that. I will try to be more consistent this year. The fact that I've uploaded 2 videos in under a week is shocking enough. And thank you for your support on the predictions video. We all know how it's already gone downhill, but that is a problem for the end of the year. So thank you all for watching, people, and I will see you soon. Goodbye.